My name is Tevita Vave Maletino Inuki Hatnana, also known as Tino. My father is from the Kingdom of Tonga, located in the South Pacific Isles, known as the Polynesian Triangle. My mother is from the Great Sioux Nation, located in North and South Dakota, as well as the Chippewa Nation, located on the border of Canada and North Dakota. I'm currently a digital marketing major studying at the Utah Valley University. What are norms and why are these stories important? Well, norms are the unwritten rules of society. Growing up, there are norms that Native Americans were cheaters, alcoholics, uneducated, lazy, and obese. Also, being Polynesian, you get stereotypes of Polynesians being obese, big, bullies, athletics, gangsters, thugs, uneducated, violent, and musically inclined. And when I look at the narrative of my Polynesian and Native American ancestors, the stereotypes of what society's norms say whom I'm supposed to be are broken down. And then I am empowered when I realize that my ancestors are some of the world's greatest navigators, astrologers, philosophers, and economists. It is then when my educational journey is perpetuated as I build upon the shoulders and legacies of my ancestors. So how do stories underline values and norms? Stories underline values and norms by being the preface for everyone's perception of one another as well as oneself. This is also known as a brand, a reputation, or an identity. If we do not know our own story or the story of our ancestors, eventually we become the story that someone else will write. These are oftentimes known as stereotypes. So how do norms vary between different stories in your culture? Well, some stereotypes are actually similar, like obesity, diabetes, or laziness. These are said about both of my cultures. But something like Native Americans, as far as specifically being alcoholics, is different from Polynesians specifically being violent. As far as culturally different in stories, there are geographically and climately differences that are different in songs and expressions. And there are also similarities, such as the theme of giving and charity. In the Polynesian theme of giving, we give all that we have, we give the best that we have. In the Native American theme of giving, you give all that you have, or whatever you give without expectation. If you give with expectation, it would be considered evil. So what are the symbolic elements of stories in your culture? Well, in the Native American culture, the circle represents the circle of life, the formation of our Mother Earth, as well as the connection that we have not only with society or with ourselves or with our families, but the connection we have as far as with Earth and all the elements in it. So as we also take a look at the Polynesian symbolisms, we could see that Maui represents a symbol of the creation, a symbol of how we were created and from the islands being pulled up out of the ground. We're going to take a look at the coconut tree, we'd see how that symbolizes life, just to name a few symbolisms in our cultures. What is the importance of stories in transmitting culture? Well, stories are the lifeblood and fingerprint of our culture by providing insights, wisdom, entertainment, perspective, and cultural views. It also provides intimate insight to the language, philosophies, and ideals of the culture. So how do the functional, educational, evolutionary, conflict, and symbolic interactionist approaches explain cultural variation in storytelling? Well, in the ecological perspective of both of my cultures, we learn to be advocates of the environment, and to cultivate Earth, and to treat it as a sacred being. When we look at the evolutionary perspective of both of my cultures teach that in the creation we were pulled up from the islands by Maui, or from Mother Earth, or Mother Earth is where we came from. And because of that, we have a duty to protect it and to be leaders in environmental issues. When we look at the conflicts, in the Native American culture, they have the peace pipe to resolve conflicts. In the Polynesian culture, we have kawa tonga ceremonies to resolve conflicts. So each culture uses a ceremony. In the functional perspectives of variation, some stories have key functions that explain and teach us values. They teach you respect, generosity, motherly values. And when we look at the symbolism, some of the symbolism stories remind us of important principles so that when we leave those stories, wherever we go and we see those symbols, they will teach us, such as the circle and the tree of life. So how can we be ambassadors from our community and shape the future of our community while still keeping our identity? Well, I feel that the best way to be ambassador is to first be an example, and be an example both in your own cultures as well as the Western world's cultures. Because when we are able to optimize our influence, we can then set a strong connection and influence in shaping the future of our community, as well as allowing our values and our identity to shape our culture. So what are the major characteristics within our culture that make us the person we are today? Well, each person is different. As far as culture it's more than just a heritage or a language, but it also includes an experience and set of ideals. And at the center of my cultures, being LDS, Tongan, and Native American, you'll find that God and family have always been at the center. And also in both of my cultures, you also see that at the center of that comes the value of extended families, friends, experiences, education, and knowledge, because we feel that material things belong to the earth and there's no way that we can actually own material things. So when we are not appropriating our own cultures, when is it okay to share something sacred of our culture with others? Well, I feel that sacred things must be shared in sacred circumstances and with individuals who could appreciate and revere those sacred ideals. I also believe that appropriating in important cultural issues, or as well as culture itself, it is best to share it the best you can, the most correct you can, whenever you can, however you can, especially by influencing others. I also feel that we would have more success in advocating cultural appropriation when we have sincere relationships with those who tend to misappropriate our culture, as those sincere relationships genuinely would help persuade them and educate them to become advocates to cultural appropriation when we are not able to.